Hello everyone, welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And we're gonna be taking a look at some frontline hotspots down in Ukraine, and this is the 18th of May, 2024. And we're starting off with the Russian Blitz on the road to Liptsy at the north of Kharkiv. And here you have the Kharkiv front line marked in the box. So let's take a closer look. Right, so Russia has made two major pushes into Ukraine from the north. This one here, aimed at this town here, Liptsy, and then you have this incursion here with the intent of grabbing Vovchansk. And we're starting off with the push towards Liptsy, as you can see down here. That's the town, and then it basically connects with the next town over, and that's how it goes all the way down to Kharkiv. Minor incursion over here from Russia, a bit unclear what the point is here, if the point is to continue down this road here or what's going on. But Russia has tried to move in on Selene, but has run into fierce resistance from the Ukrainians. They have, however, some notable successes here in and around Lukyantsy. They are trying to push into the suburbs of Liptsy up here. Not sure how well they're doing. Russia is claiming they are down here at least, but this is what we have confirmed, that they are trying to push in. But this area here is where it gets interesting. Because Russia has, in very short time, most notably up here, this is a 4-kilometer push through valleys and forested terrain, which Ukraine should have been able to defend a bit more effectively. But Russia has managed to push through. Maybe they just pushed the Ukrainians back with artillery. Maybe they overwhelmed them with pure manpower, outnumbered them. Something happened, especially in this forest. If you ask me, that is my guess, that this is where the Ukrainians broke and had to fall back. Because Russia pushed 4 kilometers in a day or two along very difficult terrain that favored the defenders. And then we have over here, this is a big wide open field, this flat slope from this ridge line down to the river. And I made a video the other day speculating that Russia might attempt an armored push across this wide open field, if there were, unless it was mined. And here we have it. They have made a push from Lukyansk all the way to this forest belt, like I predicted, and we'll see if they can make the final push across to Liptsy. But this is clearly a push with vehicles, like I predicted, and Russia will probably continue that push unless Ukraine does something about it. So we will probably see an armored assault straight down to this valley down here, where we will have mechanized infantry disembarking and then dismounting and then pushing in towards town. But this push here is quite remarkable. I thought this would take several days and that we would see the outflanking maneuver over here, but it turns out it was the other way around. The outflanking maneuver is up here on the hill, and the slower push is out here in the open field. Kind of peculiar. So focusing a bit on the armored push across the field, here you can see this is the high ground, and here you can see the slope down into the valley and the river, and this is the massive field that the Russians are now trying to cross. And you're not walking over this from Lukyansk to the forest belt, that's 2 kilometers. So the Russians, I doubt they're walking all this distance. They're pushing across with vehicles, and they are probably getting ready to make the last push to, as you can see here, the valley here, They need to push into this valley, secure it, because here they can build up forces to push into town. So in the next couple of days, I think we will see Russia trying to cross here to this valley here. And so yeah, here you have the valley. As you can see, they are over here, and a bunch of streams going downhill. So they're going to be moving from stream to stream, basically bounding across the field to reach this, disembark troops, dismount troops, fortify positions, bring in the supplies they need, and then make the push for the town itself. Now, had Ukraine held on to the slopes and the hillside, they could have obviously fired anti-tank missiles, had vehicles firing across, covering the field, making it much more difficult to make that armored push, which is more than likely coming. But Russia has pushed hard through this terrain and effectively are now safeguarding the flank of this armored push that will be directed at this valley and then at Liptsy. And this is very important because now Russia has a chance to come down on the eastern side of the river, which means they don't need to rely as heavily on grabbing the bridges to make that assault on Liptsy. Had they only come this way over the hill, they would need to secure all the bridges to attack Liptsy. Now, by coming down this way, they bypass this river and effectively bypass the bridges, and they can actually assault Liptsy from the north and from the east, and by so doing assault each bridge from 2 points, right? So this may have been the Russians' plan all along. Push in here hard with infantry, secure the hillside to allow this armored push across the field to attack Liptsy directly, and then they can move in the infantry from the north and secure the bridges as needed. So very crucial. I think in a day or two we will see this field become Russian territory, and the Russians will be fortifying and building up resources in the valley to prepare the push into town. And here we have this is a big hill, and the Russians, they were up here, they pushed into this valley. Ukrainians failed to hold it, and then Russia pushed over to this small patch of forest here. And I thought that Ukraine would hold this because this is a big forest and it's uneven terrain, and it should favor a defending force. And so I thought they would hold here for a couple of days, a couple of weeks at least, and then the next line of defense would be over here in this valley. But somehow Russia just blitzed their way through it. Maybe they just aimed an insane amount of artillery at this position and then flooded it with their own troops. That could have been it. But somehow they dislodged the Ukrainians and pushed them. My headset, I love it. So they dislodged the Ukrainians from this area, and I don't know how, but they somehow just managed to push on through this section of the hill as well. And the Ukrainians have essentially abandoned the hill. They're still fighting over here because this is urban territory, but this eastern side of the hill, Ukraine abandoned it for whatever reason, and now Russia has secured it, and the field we were just talking about is wide open for an armored assault of classic armored assault, basically. And here we I mean, take a look. This is the forest. I was talking about that big forest. It's 1,200 meters roughly across. So just short of a mile, basically. And you can see uneven terrain up and down hills. And Ukraine had the high ground over here. and Russia would have to go, yes, they could take a high ground, but then they have to go down into the valleys, up hills, and what have you. I am very surprised that Russia managed to grab all of this as fast as they did. Not sure what took place in this forest, but something happened that forced Ukraine to fall back and abandon this very defendable location. So yeah, Russia took Liptsy like I speculated, and launched a big assault on the hillside like I suspected would happen, and that allowed them to push across the field with armor, and they are now preparing to make the next push is my guess. But that Ukraine gave this to Russia that easy, it's not, I mean, easy is the wrong word, but I don't know what happened. This is a operational catastrophe for Ukrainians. This, by losing all of this as fast as they did, has opened up for Russia to make this push. And Russia is probably going to make that push very hard, driving tanks and armored transport straight up to town, potentially even straight into town. Ukraine is still holding on somewhat over here in the urban areas. Urban areas are notoriously easy to defend, as we all know. Russia is pushed in this way, as I predicted, and I'm guessing that they are probably fighting, they're probably trying to enter town over here as well. We may have Russians all the way down here if the Russian claims are correct. So, western side, Ukraine is still holding on, but something happened here, and it is catastrophic. It has allowed Russia to bypass the river, bypass the bridges, and can now strike at Liptsy directly. And moving on to Vovchansk. And here we have Vovchansk, east of the hill and fields we were talking about. Russia has pushed in this way on the east of this river, and they took some towns, and they are now in the northern end of Vovchansk, pushing in over here as well, trying to find bridges. Pushed in this way to reach a bridge here, and pushing into this valley in order to secure the bridge and keep the Ukrainians at bay. And here we have that bridge I was talking about west of the river, the hills. So Russia has pushed into these villages here, and they're trying to push into the rest of the valley. They're probably hard fighting going on in these villages. A couple of days ago, Russia was up on the hillsides, and they are now claiming they're down in the valley. And this is a tough fight for the Ukrainians if the Russians have pushed this far into the valley. You can see that Ukrainians are probably up on the hillside here, firing into the valley to help their troops fighting in the villages. But this bridge here is what the Russians are after, and they appear to have pushed all the way up to it. So the question is, has Ukraine blown it, or is it still intact? Because if you take a look at it, if Russia can secure the bridge, I'm guessing Ukraine has blown it, but if they can grab it, they can push across, then they still have to fight their way through the hills and the forests here, but as you know, they can push in and attack Vovchansk from the south and cut supply lines leading into the city. So holding this bridge or destroying it is absolutely crucial for the Ukrainians if Russia has pushed down as far as they claim. Here we have Vovchansk itself, the city. Russia has pushed up the river. They're trying to push into the northern end of the city. Pushed in quite a ways, and what they're doing is trying to reach these bridges crossing the river. This bridge is probably blown since Russia has not crossed it. And the question is if they will be able to take any of these bridges intact. There is one bridge, this one I believe, that looks a bit too big to simply be blown, but you never know. So if we take a closer look here on the satellite map here, this bridge, this one, this small, there are a couple of small bridges like this one. These are always blown by Ukraine, but you have these larger ones that may be difficult to blow up. This one, this is a big structure. A bit unclear what it is, but if it's one bridge I think maybe troublesome to blow up, it could be this one. So I think Ukraine will blow these two and all these smaller ones, but the question is what will happen with this one. This is a massive structure of some sort, so Russia may be able to fight their way across up here. We'll see what happens. Russia has also pushed out east of Vovchansk. First they took Tyke and tried to reach this bridge, but since then they have been pushing ever eastward, because you have a bridge here and another one here. So they're looking for ways to cross the river, but they failed over here, appear to have not been able to cross here either, and now they're over here looking for ways to cross, but they couldn't get across here, and probably couldn't get across here either, so now they moved over here, but we'll see. So taking a closer look at Tyke and the bridge next to Tyke, and as you can see, lots of hills, mountains, and then it's down here, right beneath these mountainsides. This is the bridge in question, and yeah, Russia has not been able to get across, so I'm guessing it's been blown up, and that is why they have pushed on over to these bridges over here instead. And next bridge over here, as you can see, mountains where we have the Russians. Here's the bridge, but Russia has not claimed they are on the other side, so the Russians have pushed out to this bridge along the mountains, tried to push towards the bridge, but they can't get across. I mean, it's a valley. You can see here that the Ukrainians are on high ground, so Russia has more than likely been unable to cross, if it's even intact, and then they have moved on over here to see if they can get across over here. And over here, here's the bridge. This is the bridge, and as you can see, these forests here, this forest is situated on a couple of hills. So Ukrainians are holding the high ground, looking down on the bridge and these open fields and the village. So I doubt Russia is able to push up and cross this bridge. And if I'm not entirely mistaken, I think as they pushed into Vovchansk, we received reports that Russia blew up a couple of bridges over here. So they might have blown up this one and this one themselves, actually. Because, yeah, there were reports of missile strikes against bridges east of Vovchansk, and I think it was these two bridges, to be honest. So Russia pushed in and hoped they could grab that one. They couldn't, and now they're stuck because they blew up the other two bridges. So east of Vovchansk, Russia has pushed towards these three bridges, trying to get across, because they need to get across this river somehow, but so far they have failed. And the question is if they will keep going east, trying to find a bridge, or if they'll try and bring in engineers to build a crossing themselves. And so what is the strategic operational importance of all of this? Is Russia creating a buffer zone? Is it a diversion? Or both? I'm thinking it's a bit of both. I think Russia is pushing in to create a buffer zone to prevent Russian rebels from pushing in from Ukraine into Russia. And by doing this buffer zone, creating it, they also draw troops from the Oskil River and Kupiansk area, and that is something they are now trying to exploit, Russia that is, by pushing hard towards Kupiansk, once again gaining ground. So I think it's two birds with one stone. Push in to make a buffer zone. Kharkiv is not the objective, the buffer zone, and as they're creating the buffer zone, it will draw attention from Kupiansk and the Oskil front line, and that will, in theory, make it easier for the Russian forces over here to push in towards Oskil. So I think that is what's going on. If it will succeed with them reaching the Oskil River, who knows, but Ukraine has allocated troops to this area from this part of the front line and elsewhere, and it appears as if Russia is now trying to exploit this situation. Next stop, Chasiv Yar. And Chasiv Yar is located in the box right next to Bakhmut. And here you have Chasiv Yar, and here we can see the Russians are pushing in, and what is it they're pushing towards? Well, as you can see here, the canal goes underground at two locations. Natural crossings and natural choke points, easy to defend. And as you can see, Russia has tried and actually reached the southern culvert, the underground canal. They've been trying to push through here to reach this section of the canal that goes underground, and they have now begun the assault on this part of Chasiv Yar. That is key, because if Ukraine can hold this with the aid of this bridge, they can help defend these two crossings. So this crossing, this part of town, and this crossing is key to defending Chasiv Yar. So Russia needs to deal with all the troops holding this, all the troops holding this, and all the troops holding this, and need to well, they need to take this part of town in order to make it easier to push through the crossings, because as long as Ukraine has the town here, they can just send down troops or send them northward to help in the defense of the crossing points. So yeah, these are the three locations Russia is going for at Chasiv Yar, and if they grab the town, then they are in a very good position in pushing through. But as you can imagine, this is where Ukraine will focus a lot of artillery, so it's going to be difficult for Russia to actually get across. As you can see here, they've been stuck on this line for weeks because it's just so easy to defend these locations. And zooming in a bit on the town here, or part of town I was talking about, you can see this bridge here is of extreme importance. If Ukraine falls back from this part of town, they will more than likely blow the bridge to deny Russia any chance to cross. And if we can see here, Russia is pushed up this way, that is here. So they are right on the outskirts and have begun slowly pushing into town, which could mean the slow end of this battlefield. Russia, they have the manpower to, over time, overwhelm any area, essentially, and once they have a foothold, they will just push in ever so slightly. So this part of town will be overrun eventually, and when that happens, Ukraine will get back across the canal and they will blow this bridge. And here we have the culverts, the crossing. This is the southern one, and this is the northern one. This bridge was blown during the battle for Bakhmut, if I'm not mistaken, so Russia can't use this bridge. They need to push across here. And, I mean, it's a bottleneck. And this is a hillside, so Russia is basically forced to come down this way, down here, which, narrows the bottleneck even more. So this is a difficult approach for the Russians. This is where they have actually made it all the way up to the culverts. But still, it's it's a tough job trying to get across here. In the north, it's, you know, a bit easier. You have a railroad bridge over here. You have another bridge over here, or road at least, and some towns and what have you. So this may be an easier approach. You have cover in the buildings, cover in the woods, and what have you. Maybe a bit more flatter ground as well. And here you have the mountains, like I said. But it's a narrow choke point, bottleneck, and yeah, I mean, this part, if Russia gets this far, it's going to be flattened by artillery, and this part of the forest is more than likely hit regularly 24/7 by Ukrainian artillery. So, to highlight a bit further, here you can see how the Russians have pushed up to this gap. They're trying to push into this town, trying to push through Bodanivka to reach this gap. And as you can see, I mean, if Ukraine loses this town, Russia can support this push, they can support this push. So as long as Ukraine holds the town, Russia will probably not be able to cross these culverts. And like I said, if Ukraine loses the town, they will blow this bridge as well, you know, to prevent the Russians from getting across. And zooming in a bit here, you can see how far Russia has pushed across the culverts. They are nearly there, but I mean, if they get across here, it's a big wide open field, so they can't really just flow in with troops because you're going to have Ukrainians all over the place here to open fire on the Russians as they're trying to push in with the vehicles along the roads or what have you. So yeah, but what Russia needs to do, they need to push all the way up to the river here, the stream, and then get into the forest, which is probably a tall order with all the artillery that is more than likely aimed at this part of the front line. So, what is the strategic and operational importance of Chasiv Yar? Well, if Russia pushes in and grabs Chasiv Yar, they are in a position to not strike at Konstantinivka, but rather push in this way between Konstantinivka and Toretsk and fight over this small town. I've forgotten the name of it. Because if they manage to pull that off, they are in a position to link up with the troops down here that has pushed in at Robotyne, right? So then you can have a push up this way and a push down this way, and you have effectively surrounded Toretsk and will force the Ukrainians in this area to make a decision. Abandon Toretsk or fight on despite being surrounded and without supplies. So if they can push through here, then they can start to try and link up these forces in order to force Ukraine to abandon all of this, which is a far better choice than going from Chasiv Yar straight to Konstantinivka. And so yeah, and that would be here then. So push through here at Chasiv Yar, push through here at Robotyne, and force Ukraine to potentially abandon all of this. And if you take a look at what the front line looks like, I mean, Russia has a couple of options. As you can see, there are a couple of bulges. Here's one bulge, here's another one, here's one, and here's one, where they can push in to link up with forces to surround and encircle Ukrainian positions, forcing the Ukrainians to fall back and abandon large sections of the front line. So pushing through at Chasiv Yar could be the start of a a greater collapse of this entire section of the front line. Or rather, it began with Bakhmut and then continued with Avdiivka, Robotyne, and Chasiv Yar may be the next important piece in this puzzle for the Russians to force a collapse along the front line. And moving on to Robotyne and Verbove. And this is in the south of Ukraine, where Ukraine launched their counteroffensive of 2023. So what are we looking at? We're looking at where Ukraine pushed in during 2023, and they made a push towards Verbove. But in order to make this push, they first had to push up on the hillside and grab Robotyne. So Robotyne became the anchor for the Ukrainian right flank, which facilitated and allowed Ukraine to make a push towards Verbove. They launched an assault with roughly 100 vehicles, if I remember correctly, straight towards Verbove in order to breach this front line here. They reached the Russian trenches, and then they didn't get any further. And in order, well, they breached these defenses here, but they couldn't breach through here to reach Verbove. And what allowed them to do this was that they took Robotyne. Right, so up here, this here is Robotyne, and here you can see it's right on top of this high ground. And as you can see on the 3D markings for where Russia had placed the defenses, if you have Robotyne, you have an overwatch position looking down into the valley, into the low ground. And any Ukrainian movement, any Ukrainian troops trying to move back and forth down here in order to launch another assault at Verbove will come under fire from Robotyne. So that is why Robotyne is so important. If Ukraine has Robotyne, they push Russia back, and Russia is unable to fire down at troops moving this way towards Verbove. Now that Russia has pushed in and reclaimed Robotyne, they can open fire on Ukrainian troops trying to assault Verbove. Right, so Robotyne, Ukraine wants to get to Verbove. It's the best chance they have of breaching the Surovikin line, and right now Russia can shoot at any Ukrainians trying to come down to assault Verbove by firing from the high ground. So when the Russians are up here, they now control the valley, and Ukraine can't send in troops through the valley towards Verbove without getting shot at from Russians up here on the high ground. So that is why Robotyne is of such importance. It's not because it's a stepping stone towards Tokmak. It's because if you hold this one, if the Ukrainians hold Robotyne, they push the Russians back from the high ground and denies them any chance to open fire into the valley, and that allows Ukraine to move in troops to launch an assault against the Surovikin line and the town of Verbove. So if Ukraine wants to launch another assault at the Surovikin line, they first need to launch an assault and reclaim Robotyne, and when they have done that, that is when they can launch another attack in order to try and breach the defenses and reach the town of Verbove. So what are the strategical operational importance stuff of losing Robotyne? Well, it's like I said, if Russia has Robotyne, they can open fire into the valley, and that will deny Ukraine the opportunity to effectively launch assaults at Verbove. And if Ukraine can't grab Verbove, they have lost their best bet in punching through the Surovikin line. Because they would then have to find somewhere else to attack through all the minefields and what have you, which will take 2, 3, 4 months. Here at Verbove, they are right on the defensive line. Here they can assault the defensive line directly, fight their way through town, and then they're on the other side. Russia is now in a position where they can deny Ukraine to do this. So Ukraine needs to attack Robotyne once more before they can punch through the defensive line. So this small town is very, very important. And that's it. I am super tired. I am not at the top of my game, but I felt like doing the video anyway, and I think it shows that I'm not at 100% as I'm recording this video, but fuck it. I made it anyway. So that's it. I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and god damn it, give them hell.